Well, my guess is that there's at least one Kansas politician waking up this morning ticked off at me. And I think that's the case on many days, but I think today there's a specific reason for it as well.
Yeah, I was wondering how this was different than yesterday. Or Monday.
Well, this is different because this morning, there's something specific here. By the way, happy Friday. We have made it to the end of the week on a Red Friday on KCMO. Cindy Holscher is a state rep on the Kansas side of the state line in Overland Park. And senator, excuse me. And she put this up on X, formerly Twitter, last night. And I just saw it before the show this morning, and I had to respond. She has a picture of a school lunch here. By the way, it's the best-looking school lunch I've ever seen in my life, which means it might be, a fake school lunch photo. But neither here nor there. It's a picture of a school lunch. Looks like chicken nuggets, a little carton of low-fat milk, some sweet potato fries, some broccoli, some carrots, some tomatoes. Looks like some grapefruit. Oh, boy, this is top-notch school lunch there. It's way better than my school lunch looked back in the day. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, I see some nice projectiles on that platter. Lunchroom fodder.
Yeah, seriously. Food fight! And Cindy Holscher, Overland Park Senator, writes here, looking for your thoughts on school lunches. Should there be a charge, or should it be treated like other school materials, i.e. books or supplies, and be free to everyone? So, of course, she's got, dozens of comments here, and everyone writes, free, I support free lunches. Dave writes on Twitter, we can afford to feed the kids. Free. Notice the way the question is framed, right? It's always like, do you want something for free, air quotes, without any indication on what that free might, cost? Novel concept, I know, but you've got all the leeches in the comments saying, free, we love free, yes, feed the kids, free. Well, I just shared that, and I wrote the very simple phrase of, there is no free lunch. Figuratively and literally. There is no such thing as a free lunch. And I think back to my freshman year at Villanova, Economics 101, before colleges went totally woke. So this must have been, 17, 18 years ago now. And that was one of the first lines the professor shared with us. There is no free lunch. Nothing is free. Now, it might be free to you, but someone inherently has to take on a cost. There is no free lunch. So I'm sure that Senator Holscher is waking up this morning and is not going to be happy when, she sees that I happen to share her free lunch tweet and kind of, blew up her narrative. There's no such thing as free. What's it going to cost you, the taxpayer in Kansas? And by the way, as Al writes in our comments, Pete, who wants to tell her that parents buy all the supplies for the kiddos, right? Didn't we just talk about how much it costs Mark to go shopping for his kids' supplies?
Absolutely. I was saying public education is not free.
No.
Right? You go and enroll, it's a whole bunch of stuff right there up front. So that's where that food cost would be, right at the front.
Yeah, exactly.
Not on a day-to-day basis.
No. What are we paying now? Depending on the school district in Kansas, it's between usually $14,000 and $20,000 per kid per year for public education, all in. And what did you end up paying there, Mark, for all those supplies that we talked about? You guys went to, what'd you do, Walmart this year, right?
Yeah, we went to Walmart. It was, I can't remember the exact number, like close to $250, I think.
That's $250. So who wants to let her know that, that's certainly not free. Mark's paying that out of pocket, even though the Kansas Department of Education estimates that school districts will spend $17,358 per student this year. Per student. Think about that. $17,000 per kid on education. If there was truly school choice, what would you do with $17,000 for your kid? Maybe you say, hey, I'm going to send them to the public schools. Maybe you wouldn't. But I do know this. You tack on free this, free that, someone's paying for it. And you know who's paying for it? You're paying for it. 913-408-7710 is our studio line and our text line here on KCMO. I mean, you're a Kansas parent. You're a Kansas taxpayer. You're getting the kids up and out to school this morning. And you have a state senator doing the old, wouldn't you love something for free? I'm going to get you something for free. This is what they do. They promise you stuff. They buy your vote. Hey, you vote for me, I'll get you a school lunch. You don't have to pay for it out of your own pocket. This is the classic government buy-off. Buy your vote by promising you something for free without any indication on what it might cost and how it could impact you and the taxpayers and everybody else in your community. But don't worry, they got it to you for free, air quotes. So you just sit down, shut up, vote for them, and move on. And it is the scam of all scams. And as long as they keep doing that, people are going to keep falling for it. Unbelievable. On the text line, Pete, parents don't buy all supplies anymore in KCK. The district provides it, and we just got brand new iPads. Okay, can someone explain the iPad thing to me in schools? I'm not saying it's got to be like when Mark and I were kids. Never mind when John was, John was walking uphill both ways to school. So we know that.
With a Big Chief tablet. Number 2 sharpened pencils.
See, but we had those too. It wasn't a ton of change. I mean, I know it's a larger gap than people might realize. But I remember the books in the backpack. Oh, man, some of those books were so heavy. Right? I'm not saying it's got to be like that. But do we need the iPad? Do we need these kids just staring at screens for 8 hours a day provided by the government?
Experts recommend less screen time for children.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Right.
I mean, we try to limit our kids' screen time. But I guess, if you're staring at it and getting indoctrinated in a public school, it's okay or something like that. I know that it cuts down on books and supplies and not having to repurchase books and things like that when they get destroyed. I get all of that. But is the iPad really the right way? One of my favorite things from the 90s, being a kid in school, and you let me know, Mark, if you remember this, or maybe John. I don't want to, leave John out of this conversation. But when you would open up the front tab of your textbook for that year, and the people who had used it in previous years had their names on the side.
Sure.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, geez.
I know that guy.
Yeah, exactly. So, like the guy who had it last year, or like if the hot chick had it last year, you're like, oh, man, no, whoa, I'm going to, this book's great. This is going to be good luck for me this year.
I always remember if there's sticky pages. Ew, why is there sticky pages on this book? Yeah.
Gosh, you guys were sophomoric. Unbelievable. Bunch of hooligans you had there, Mark, you were buddies with back in the day. Sheesh.
Especially if it was my brother's book from 3 years prior.
Did you ever have that?
One time.
See,
One time.
Those are the little things that kids are missing out on these days. That was always great. You'd get your textbooks for the year, you'd open up the front flap, and you'd see, depending on how old the book was, the kids older than you who had that same textbook the previous year. That was always cool. Now you just get these dopey iPads. And you got to stare at the screens all day. Come on, that's not living. That's not America. We used to be a proper country. 913-408-7710. Welcome in. I guess backpacks are falling by the wayside? No, come on. Don't do that to me. Pete, we used to have it carry all our stuff in our hands. Okay, all right. Sometimes when you get a day and you're like, gosh, what's going to be on the rundown today? What are we going to talk about? Well, just got to leave it to the local politicians. They'll give you plenty of fodder in a short period of time. So last night, Overland Park State Senator Cindy Holscher, she put out the tweets. Do we call it the X now or do we call it the tweet still? It's Twitter, but it's on X. I don't know. But she put out, as we just told you about, a picture of a school lunch saying, looking for your thoughts on school lunches. Should there be a charge or should it be treated like every other school material, i.e. books or supplies, and be free to everyone?
It was her post on X.
It was her post on X. Thank you, Mark. Well, first off, supplies are not free. Any parent knows that. And I just shared that, and I said there's no free lunch, literally and figuratively. There is no free lunch. We are spending $17,000 on average per student in the state of Kansas. $17,000. And, when she puts that question out there, it's kind of like, free sounds great, but you're not telling people what the cost associated might be. Now, also, we dove into the issue of iPads in schools. That came up because KCK, I guess, is doing free iPads now. Mike is in KCK. What's up, Mike?
Good morning, Pete. Love your show.
Thank you, sir. What's happening?
Hey, you make mention of those free iPads in KCK, and it is true they do use iPads. However, like you've already alluded to, nothing is free. If you look at KCK or Wyandotte County and you look at their tax rates, personal property tax rates, etc., you see that they are among the top. I believe we're number 2 now. We were number 1, but I believe we're number 2 for the highest tax rates in the state of Kansas. So we have a tremendous burden in taxes, and of course, our public school funding receives their benefits from the taxpayer. So, these people who think they're getting a free iPad and not having to pay for school supplies, they probably need to rethink their line of thinking.
Yeah, that is well said there, Mike. It's funny, too, how it's like, hey, wow, woo, I got a free iPad. And the government gets to brag to these people and say, don't worry, we're getting you a free iPad. Well, what if you lowered my taxes? Then I could buy my own iPad and actually own it instead of basically getting an iPad loaned to me by the government. How about that?
I agree. And unfortunately, I think over here across the state line in Kansas City, on the Kansas side, I think we're kind of overshadowed by the fiasco with the whole taxes and everything going on the Jackson County side. But I can tell you, Pete, it's a mess over here too. And hopefully these politicians, they work for the taxpayer. Let's hope they keep that in mind.
Yeah, well said. I will say, though, you got a good police chief over there in Carl Oakman. He's doing good work. We had him on the show earlier this week. He was great.
Yeah, I was glad to see him come on. So
good deal.
We're trying, but it's little by little.
I know. It's an uphill slog everywhere, Mike. Well said. Thank you very much, my man. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
913-408-7710. Pete, at $17,000 per kid, if I could get that money, I'm sending my kid to Rockhurst. Yeah, you're probably not alone in that. Jeez. Other good questions. Pete, what happened to all the COVID money schools got? I thought we gave them billions of dollars in the name of COVID. That's a very good point as well. We did, and I have no idea where it is. I don't know if anyone knows where it is. Jim's out east. What's up, Jim? You're on KCMO.
Hey, Pete, on that $17,000 you're talking about, I'm going to see how you can take that all because transportation costs is built in there. Teacher salaries is probably the biggest cost out of all the $17,000.
Well, yes, so, the pensions as well. I mean, everything, right?
But you can't say that $17,000 is for your child because that's based with everything in it. So if you go to move your child, that money's going to be less than $17,000.
Well, what do you mean if you go to move your child?
Well, if you want to move them to another school district, that's based on educational costs, not student transportation costs. That transportation cost is still involved in that district area. So you're not going to move $17,000 to another school.
Yes. That is locked in on that district, whether your kid is there or not.
Correct.
Yes. No, you're right about that. Absolutely, Jim. I mean, but here's the thing, right? That's the only way that we can really quantify it and put a number on it. I know it's, not following your kid around, but on average in the state of Kansas, and it's pretty similar in Missouri, it costs the government, i.e. you, the taxpayer, $17,000 per child to go to public school every year. $17,000. If there was true school choice and you could use that money, what would you do with it? Now, maybe you say, hey, I love our local school. I would keep them there. But maybe you wouldn't. It's a lot of money, $17,000 per kid per year. And now you have this state senator, Cindy Holscher in Overland Park, throwing this up on her X account last night saying, should there be a charge for school lunch? Or should it be free to everyone? Well, I would love everything to be free. But as I said this morning to her, there is no free lunch. It's one of the first things I learned in my Econ 101 class freshman year at Villanova. I'll never forget the teacher saying, the professor, I should call him. I don't want to insult him, professor. If Joe Biden's a professor, this guy's a professor. I'll tell you that right now. I'll never forget him saying, it was one of the first slides he put up early in the year. There is no free lunch. Nothing is inherently free. It costs somebody something. But politicians have gotten away with this for a very long time. They get to go out there, hey, what do you think about free school lunch? And some of you are noting that, hey, the school lunch is not cheap. One person here saying that for my 3 kids, the school lunch is $250 for the month of October. And by the way, that includes a fall break where they're not going to be there for a couple of days. I mean, that's not cheap. So it sounds good. Hey, sure, I'd love to save, $80 per kid per month on school lunches if your kids do that. But it's never that simple. It's never going to be that simple. By the way, now we're going down memory lane as we talked about the iPads and KCK and the cost of those things. Some of you are bringing up book socks on the text line. Do you remember those things back in the day? Did you ever have those?
That was after me, I think.
That was after.
Not sure.
Mark must have had
was it
book
a type
socks.
of a fabric book cover?
Yes, it was it was to protect the book.
Mm-hmm.
So now there were 2 ways to do it. You could either buy the book socks or you could make your own out of brown paper bags.
Oh, okay.
And then you could decorate the cover of the book cover, the brown paper bag, however you saw fit. Mm-hmm. Now, you didn't do that? Mark's looking at me like I got 3 heads. You didn't have the book covers?
I kind of remember that. I don't know if that's a weird memory I'm blocking in my head or what. But
I
kind
don't
of
know.
remember it.
I mean, a lot of people are bringing it up on the text line. Those were classics, man, the book covers.
Yeah, you get the new book and it's something. Hey, let's be kind of artsy and do the thing here. Well, let's make a book cover here.
Yeah.
Especially when you got it the first year.
I remember those book
we
covers.
did some. I remember making some. I did mine out of foil one time.
Man, the kids are missing out on that these days. Now they just get handed an iPad. All the creativity of the book covers and then opening up the flap of the book and seeing who had it last year. And if it was one of the jocks, you're like, oh, boy. Oh, wow, that's cool. If it was one of the losers, you were like, oh, man. If it was the hot girl, you were like, oh, wow.
And we had a book fair this week at my girls' school, and they didn't, my youngest didn't want a book. She wanted the fidgets that were next to the cash register.
Don't even get me started on that. It was the book fair at the preschool this week, too. And Chloe, of course, has this book now that's got a flashlight that she wants to use every night. So I'm blaming Mom for that one. Oh, gosh.